A very good morning to you, Nigeria, and welcome to another edition of What's Your Take? My name is Dayo Akintobi, and I'll be taking you through all the big stories that made the headlines this past week. Joining me to do that and to read all the stories and tell us what happened is my trusty sidekick, Yetunde Afolabi. Yetunde, how are you this morning?
Morning, Dayo. I'm very well, thank you.
Very good. Well, guess what? COVID is back in the news. I just heard a news report that 2 confirmed cases in Rivers and 1 in Lagos. We thought we were out of the woods with COVID. What gives? Did you get a COVID vaccination?
Yes, I did actually. I did sometime last year.
Very good. So you have no fears about a resurgence of COVID whatsoever?
No.
Well, I hear that they're going to start giving booster vaccinations again in the UK. Maybe our health authorities here in Nigeria will begin to think about doing something about boosting all of our protection against COVID. We definitely don't want it coming back. It was too devastating. It had too much of an impact on our daily lives. We don't want to see COVID back again.
No, we don't.
All right, folks, thank you for joining us for another engaging discussion about all the things that are going on in our daily lives in Nigeria throughout the week. We have a guest with us in the studio, but before I introduce her, let me just bring you up to speed on 1 or 2 things that are out there. The internet is breaking. Actually, it broke yesterday and continues to break this morning with a trending story about an audio tape of Peter Obi and Bishop Oyedepo, in which Peter Obi seems to be asking for the man of God's assistance in getting Christian votes. However, that was not really the point of attraction on the internet. The big thing was his repeated use of "Yes, Daddy," "Thank you, Daddy," "Amen, Daddy." And that has certainly become the new catchphrase of Nigeria. Last week was go to court on every little thing. And this week it's now "Amen, Daddy, thank you, Daddy." So we've got memes, we've got stickers, we've got skits, any and everything now. Thank you, Daddy. So go out and get your own t-shirt today, hot and smoking, fresh off the press. Get your "Amen, Daddy" t-shirt today. All right. The next one that also became a big media sensation last week was Igbo elder statesman Mr. Iwanyawu, who, speaking at the 1-year anniversary of Governor Soludo's ascension to office, gave a speech in which he alluded to the Yoruba as rascals. And of course, that caused a big problem. However, he came out to deny that he was taken out of context, and I took the time to listen to the audio tape 12 times, and I'll tell you what the problem was. In saying what he said about Yoruba rascal, he used a phrase, "they are," which came across sounding like "they are." Please, there's a very big difference between "there are" and "they are." But when you say it quick, if you speak as fast as I speak, "there, there," it's difficult to tell which he's speaking, which he's alluding to, but think about it this way. They are political rascals. That means all Yoruba people. But there are political rascals among them. Simply means there are a few here and there, not all of them. So which did he actually mean? Who knows? But that's why we should pick our words carefully and we should enunciate. There are, they are. Let's get it clear so that there's nobody can misconstrue what we said or what we intended to say. And the last one for you this morning on a lighter note is another thing. Social media won't kill us in Nigeria. Another video on social media that showed 4 people pushing a blue line train. Can you imagine that? Do you know how heavy a train is? Can 100 men even push a train? This blue line has 4 rail cars. I put it to you that 100 men can't even push 1, let alone 4. So how are 4 men pushing 4 rail cars on a track in Lagos? It's not possible. Well, Lamata, the agency in charge of the train, has come out and said it was just some people up to mischief. The train was moving on its own power. And these 4 people got behind it and acted like they were pushing it. Yeah, we saw the train moving, but Lamata is saying the train was moving under its own power. And so we should not belittle the efforts of providing Lagosians with train service. Bottom line is this. Take everything you see on social media with a pinch of salt, because not everything is the way it seems. Not everything that you see that's presented to you is actually the way it seems. That train was moving on its own power. 4 men cannot push it, even if they have the power of Hercules. All right, having said that, let's get into the nitty-gritty of today's show. And joining me to take a deep dive into the stories that made the headlines last week is Fabia Ogunmekan. Fabia is a former executive director of Women in Successful Careers. She is a lawyer and developmental consultant and is also the founder of Adaba Initiatives. Welcome to What's Your Take, Fabia. Thank you for taking out the time to join us this morning.
Thank you very much, Dayo.
Very
Great to
good.
be here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining us. I noticed that you worked with Women in Successful Careers, and of course, we're in political season. Well, there are 6 deputy governors elect, and there's 6 female deputy governors elect, and there's 1 woman who is a whisker away from becoming our first elected governor in Adamawa State. That should make you proud, since you are an advocate of women in successful careers. What do you say about that?
I don't know if proud is the word. I've had quite a few conversations in the last week, actually, analyzing how did the women fare coming out of these political elections. And we're not very excited. We were really hopeful, and we're still hopeful that we will produce the first elected female governor. Unfortunately, as has happened in the past, results are currently inconclusive. And then that sort of dampens our hope a bit. But this is Nigeria, so we keep resilience. That's who we are. And we're hopeful. The women didn't fare well, to be honest. And yes, the token 5 deputy positions, it's not what we were going for. So, well, we remain hopeful. And that what we didn't get in the elected positions, we will hopefully get in the political appointments.
All right. Keep hope alive for Nigerian women in politics and in the corporate world as well. All right, Yetunde, what do you have for us? Let's see our first story and what made the headlines and got our danda up in the past week.
The Department of State Security, DSS, has confirmed discovery of a plan to stop Tinubu swearing in and install an interim government. Not surprising, there has been a flurry of reactions from various political quarters. The PDP stated that the idea of an interim government is a plot by the APC and DSS to subvert the election tribunal. The party challenged the secret police to arrest the politicians behind the alleged plot. The Arewa Consultative Forum, ACF, for its part, called for the arrest and prosecution of anyone or persons found or caught canvassing for an interim government. The Nigerian Governors Forum, NGF, in its own statement demanded arrest of the plotters for an interim government. Legal experts, in their wisdom, have dismissed any possibility of an interim national government coming into existence. The Nigerian public have one question. Why is the DSS seemingly not eager to arrest those they claim they know? Over to you, Dayo.
All right, Fabia, let me just pass that question on to you. Why is the DSS not eager to arrest those they claim they know? They came out with a press release saying that some people, that they've uncovered a plot of some people who are planning to use instrumentalities of the courts. And I'm actually interested in your response because you're a lawyer and this borders on a legal issue. They're saying that some people, I think in the political class, are planning to use instrumentalities of the court to abort the swearing in and inauguration of the president-elect and his cabinet and foist an illegal interim government upon the people of Nigeria. Apparently, that such a contraption is unknown to our constitution and is illegal. Me not being a lawyer, I'd like to defer to you as to your thoughts on, is it possible to actually put an interim government in place? And if not, then what games are the DSS might the DSS be playing?
Great. Very interesting, and I'm as intrigued as you are. Well, constitutionally, I do not think, as far as I know from my experience, that it is possible for anybody or group of persons to simply come and say we are installing an interim government. That sounds to me more like a coup, or it sounds to me like some kind of treasonable act where you are actually going underhand and, it has to really be a full-blown coup. Other than that, it is the president of the country, given certain circumstances, constitutionally defined circumstances, that can then sort of declare an interim government. And we've had that in the past, and we've seen exactly how that worked and how that played out and the reasons for which, that sort of happened. So we had that obviously in the sort of 1992 elections and all of that. So I am as curious and bemused as you are by this particular news of, these shenanigans ongoing. As we know, we've come through a really politically heated elections where Nigerians very hopefully in their masses went out to declare their votes, and some would say and argue that the elections were certainly not free and fair across board. There were certain discrepancies, and those who are politically aggrieved in terms of the political opposition have now gone to court, or at least have begun steps to go to court to air these grievances which have not been hidden and which have been sort of generally laid bare and discussed publicly. So that's, as far as I know, is the sort of conversational scenario that's happening. If there is more information, which the DSS has confirmed it has, then they should sort of go about and do their job. As I understand the DSS to be a secret service, secret police, which means that most times we really don't know what it is that they're doing. So on the one hand, I want to applaud public accountability and telling us the great work that they're doing and this great information that has come through that they are pursuing to its logical conclusion. But I know that I have concerns.
So you think it was okay for them to come out and give this press release and scare the whole country, and especially as you said, they're an intelligence agency. They work covertly. So for them to have done this press release and told the whole world that there is some shenanigans afoot, was it the right thing to do, you think?
Well, no. So I'm not saying that it's the right thing to do, but I'm saying that given that they have done it, so given that they have done it, we are now aware. We are now. So then it now means that they have to inspire that confidence in us that they're going to see through what they have brought out to light as an existing threat. They have to see it through properly, and which is where, like I said, I have some reservations.
Yes.
We are hopeful that the process will be, they have made it transparent. They have brought it out into the public, so they now must continue on that path to keep us informed and tell us as a public, how these, investigations are progressing.
Very good.
Other than that, but I mean, we Nigerians have been democratic in the exercise of our rights.
Yes.
I think that we need to be really careful, and let's not cross the line between freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and freedom of challenging processes that we're allowed constitutionally to do, to get muddied in waters of these other kinds of conversations. So
yes, very good. The one thing I did pick out of that is that at the end of the day, perhaps it's only the government really who has the powers to be able to impose that kind of a contraption, illegally or not. The average man on the street cannot wake up one day and say, I want an interim government and I'm going to make one happen. So in a related issue, especially since we're talking about the law and the courts, the NBC, the National Broadcasting Commission, slammed a 5 million naira penalty on Channels TV for breaking the broadcast code during the appearance by the Labour Party vice presidential candidate, Dati Baba Ahmed. He appeared on Politics Today on Channels last week and said something to the effect that because of the irregularities that marred the election, there should be no inauguration of the president-elect. And that, a lot of people view that as inciting public disorder and could be treasonable, and they've been calling for all manner of calling for his head. And the NBC has now come out and said Channels, by allowing him to have said that on air, that they violated the broadcast code, and they have slammed them with a fine. There is some accusation of double standards. Femi Fani-Kayode has come on air and said worse things. Bayo Onunuga online has said worse things. Festus Keyamo, in his combative mode, has come on air. So is the NBC being selective? Is the NBC, does it have its own agenda? Is it partisan? Has it become political? Is this fair for it to have singled out Channels for sanction?
So for risk of us being sanctioned.
Thank you for being considerate.
Yes, this is really interesting. So the broadcast apparently was said to have been volatile and capable of inciting public disorder, and therefore violated some sections of the broadcasting code. Now, I haven't read the entire broadcasting code, but from a layman's perspective, and let me speak as a layman here, I certainly was not incited by the comments, and I suspect that, well, there were, like you did allude to, There were some Nigerians who felt that it was insightful, but then there are many others who also were not triggered by these comments. They were simply comments in line, like sort of following on from our previous conversation, in line with grievances that we all already know have been publicly aired several times and are now being followed through the court processes. So personally, I don't find these triggering, but the censorship body for the media, who sort of has the authority at this point and who knows best, has felt it, deemed it necessary to sanction channels. We haven't heard from Channels Media, at least, I didn't find anything. It would be interesting to hear what their response is. There is a possibility, yes, of seeing it as double standards, given the examples you raised, but it would be interesting to hear from channels what their perspective is.
Yes, indeed it will. What comes out of all of that is that regulation is subjective, because at the end of the day, how do you determine who you want to sanction and who you didn't want to sanction? Because as Fabia has rightly said, some people felt it was inciting, but a large body of other people thought it wasn't. And if the law is ambiguous and is subject to interpretation, then it's subjective that the regulator has to be the one to determine what is inciting and what is not.
If I can just add to that. So the law can be subjective, but ideally it shouldn't be. There should be examples, tried and tested cases, precedents that you can refer to, such that the laws are meant to be reasonable, so that the reasonability test is passed. So we can make judgments from that, and sometimes laws are abused.
Yes, and in such an instance, then we don't have these allegations of double standards and witch hunting and partisan interests and things like that. All right, today, what do you have next for us? Something about fuel subsidy, I see. That's in the news again. What's happening with fuel subsidy?
Fuel subsidy removal. Labour threatens to mobilize workers against Tinubu government in June. The Nigeria Labour Congress, NLC, and the Trade Union Congress, TUC, have said that they will allow the removal of fuel subsidy only if the incoming administration of President-elect Bola Tinubu takes steps towards the repair and revitalization of government's refineries and allows modular refineries. The Buhari administration has stated that it will hand over the implementation of the petrol subsidy removal and palliative measures to the incoming administration. All yours, Dayo.
Well, the Buhari administration dropped this hot potato and said, this one is not for me. I leave it to you, the incoming administration. I'm not going to deal with the public opprobrium and uproar of being the one responsible for removing this subsidy, especially not after the Naira redesign debacle, the fuel scarcity. This government doesn't want to have to deal with public anger, so they're passing the buck to the next administration. Before I come to you, Fabia, let's watch a couple of interviews we conducted with everyday Nigerians to get their take on the impending removal of fuel subsidy.
Concerning the rumors about the fuel increment, I think personally it's getting out of hand. So basically it affects everything we do. So as a businessman, day to day, I'm seeing increase. It might not be directly because sometimes transportation, people want to come on set, people want to go about, get equipment and different things, and everyone's complaining like the prices are outrageous, and you can't blame the transport guys. Like, you have to know that it's coming from things like this, the fuel increment. So if it's possible, we keep it the way it is or go lower. I hope that works, because it's really an impact on us, it's an impact on our family and then people around us. So please, keep it safe, keep it here. We're trying, it's okay for now.
All right, so concerning this rumor of increment in the fuel price, I mean, looking at the environment and the country, and there's a lot of pressure. So adding that to that pressure right now is not the best for now, because there are a lot of disadvantages, there are a lot of inconveniences, there are a lot of troubles, pressures that this might bring about. And look at business owners, generally every sector is going to be, they're going to feel it. Transportation, frustration, and you see cars queuing up to get fuel, movement problems and all of that. So then the farmers and everyone is going to feel it.
All right, Fabia, it seems to be generally there's a consensus that subsidy must go. It's how it goes and what is done to cushion the effect of its removal. That is the key, the million-dollar question. We're hearing rumors that fuel will cost anywhere from 400 to about 750 naira at prevailing market rates when the subsidy is removed. The million-dollar question, of course, is how are Nigerians going to cope? NLC has said, fix the local refineries, the government refineries. If you fix them, then we avoid transportation costs, we avoid clearing costs, all that kind of cost. And that should keep the price down. Government, for some reason, hasn't been able to fix, with all the turnaround maintenance and all the money thrown at the refineries, they're still inactive, they're still moribund. Government seems to have a problem with that. So there are other palliative measures being considered, things like government buses, transportation, making things a bit easier, salary increases, things like that. But how do you see this notion of fuel subsidy removal as it relates to the well-being of the average Nigerian down the road?
Right. Oh, wow. So I'm with the people, I'm with the voice of the people. Generally, like, you know, if we're going to be moving in this direction, like you said, there should be some palliative measures, there should be the cushioning effect, and it should be well thought out, proper strategies, which is what the, you know, the Labour Congress should also be doing, rather than threatening strikes. I don't think that strikes is really the answer at this point. And as you know, we saw from the Voice Vox Pops,
Yes.
you know, this is certainly not what Nigerians want. Coming out from all the various dramas that we've had, like you said, Naira redesign, coming out of elections, you know, we really do need a period of stability and some just allowing us to breathe. So I think what the next administration should be thinking about as they take over is really, like you said, around palliative measures and really thinking through the strategy properly. And the Labour Congress should be on the table, on the side of Nigerians, having these conversations for us. So I remember, I think it was during Jonathan's government, probably in the last days of his government, when we had a town hall where seemingly the opinions of Nigerians were sought en masse, and the pros and cons, because these things need to be explained to us, right? These things need to be, Nigerians are reasonable, you know, so obviously nobody wants to suffer more hardship. Nobody wants to pay more if it's not absolutely necessary, especially in a country like ours,
Yes.
where we have, you know, just gone through so much hardship. And there's really no reason to have, you know, to be putting us through what, you know, what we are going through as a people.
Yes.
So yes, repairing the refineries is certainly should be on the table. It has been on the table, and you know, your guess is as good as mine why we are still where we are. Okay. But I think it's not enough to just make demands, and if it's not, this demand is not met, then you know, it goes in the other direction. Right? We know that strikes can work. We see what's happening in the UK, for example, you know, with the health workers strikes and you know, the transportation workers strikes.
Yes.
But the most important thing for us, where we sit, is effective real-time strategies and really carrying the Nigerian populace along. Let's have another town hall, which we, you know, like we had all those many years ago. Let's explain for those who were not part of those conversations, because we've been having this whole threat,
All right.
you know, of subsidies for as long as we care to remember. So let's have a conversation about it. Let's carry Nigerians along, and let's arrive at strategic solutions that will, you know, sort of ease the burden for us if that is the direction that we have to go.
Very well said. So the incoming government, over to you. You heard Fabia. Let's have a conversation.
You heard me?
Yes. Let's have a town hall meeting. Let's discuss this issue before it is put on the table, and let's have well thought out strategies that will mitigate the impact of this fuel subsidy removal on the average Nigerian. We're running out of time. Yetunde, over to you. What's the next thing you have for us?
Igbo leader who threatened to invite indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, to Lagos is in DSS custody. In a now viral video, the self-acclaimed Eze Indigbo of Ajao Estates, Lagos, Chief Frederick Nwajagu, issued a threat to invite members of the proscribed IPOB to secure the property of Igbo people in the state. Arrested in Lagos by officers of the Nigeria Police Force, Nwajagu was subsequently handed over to the DSS, who handle terrorism matters. He's slated to be transferred to Abuja for investigation and possible prosecution. Over to you, Dayo.
What do you make of this, Fabia? This has befuddled me ever since it came in the news. What do you make of this, this gentleman threatening, well, can I even call him a gentleman, threatening that he's going to unleash IPOB on Lagos markets to protect the assets of Igbo people? This whole Igbo versus Yoruba tension and strife that has emanated in the aftermath of the election. what is this all about?
Right.
And why is it happening?
And I think, Dayo, that's really what the issue is. So I was going to say on a lighter note, DSS seems to have their hands full,
Yes.
in this past week, and we're hearing a lot from them. So, well, good work to them, or kudos to them for the work that they're doing. IPOB, for all intents and purposes, has been declared a terrorist movement, and clearly the alleged statement by the chief, by Eze, is possibly insightful. So I can understand how this can be seen to be a threat, to peace, and so warrants full investigation. But like you said, the drumming of this whole tribal and ethnic sentiment has really come to a head during the elections. And I think that now that, at least the Lagos state elections are over and we have, our governor back in the seat, mediation, peaceful settlement and resolution of this brewing conflict, I think benefits no one. And I think that it should be a priority of, the government of Lagos State to, wade in and ensure that, whatever tensions are building are resolved peacefully and timely. Lagos is a metropolitan city, just like, like New York and London. We pride ourselves on being ethnically diverse, and it's the different, cultures that bring vibrancy to the city, and historically has been so, in Lagos. So I think that we really should nip this in the bud, and just nip it in the bud so that it doesn't begin to escalate. And of course, where there is insightful conversations,
Yes.
Let that be dealt with properly.
Thank you very much. And so heal those wounds. Time to heal those wounds and hug our neighbors and hug our neighbors and love one another and bury the past in terms of all the electoral differences we all had. All right, that's the much we can take for this edition of What's Your Take. We had a whole bunch more stories to cover, but we've run out of time because we had so much fun. So thank you all very much for joining us. Thank you, Fabia Ogunmekan, for being our guest today. We look forward to having you again. This has really been engaging, and I wish we had more time to analyze a whole bunch of the stories that covered the headlines this past week. So to all of you out there, we wish you a great week ahead. My name again is Dayo Akintobi. Thank you for joining us on this edition of What's Your Take. Have a good day and a fantastic week ahead.